This video, real quick, just focuses on the word jurisdiction. And in legal terms, when we're talking about courts, jurisdiction means who gets to hear the case. Like, we've already reviewed that there's a bunch of different types of courts. So, like, what court gets to hear what case? So, we're just going to focus on, for this, the Supreme Court's jurisdiction. Like, when does the Supreme Court get to hear certain cases? So the Supreme Court does have the ability to claim what's called original jurisdiction. And this is kind of like what the name implies. This is when the case starts in the Supreme Court. Like the Supreme Court is the first court to hear the case. And this is like super rare. Again, there are a couple cases in which the Supreme Court could take the case first before any other court hears it. Any kind of disputes involving officials from foreign governments, if there's some sort of legal dispute involving a foreign official, it could start like in the Supreme Court. If there's a dispute between states, it could, doesn't have to, start in the Supreme Court as well. The Supreme Court could take the case immediately. An example of that would be the 1990 case of New York and New Jersey. New Jersey versus New York, I should say. And this was actually a dispute between the two states on who owned Ellis Island, which is where the Statue of Liberty is located, because it's in the water between New Jersey and New York. The Supreme Court actually took this case. Doesn't really matter, but they ended up ruling in favor of New Jersey actually owning that land. But like, this is just an example of the Supreme Court assuming what's called original jurisdiction. It only happens like once or twice a year, maybe. But that's that. More likely than not, the Supreme Court is assuming what's called appellate jurisdiction. And basically, what this means is that a bunch of courts have already heard the case first, and it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will have kind of the final say. This is much more likely like what the Supreme Court typically does. And just an example of this is a case called Timms versus Indiana. I could have highlighted like a million different cases, but this is an appellate case in 2019. And this involved the state of Indiana actually as part of a drug bust. When the individual was arrested, Timms, not only was the drugs confiscated, but his brand new Range Rover or Land Rover was also confiscated. And the value of the drugs was like under $1,000, but the Range Rover was like $50,000 like plus. And he claimed that this was like an excessive like punishment to have the state like actually seize his vehicle because it was involved in the drug bust. And as you can see on the timeline, I mean, it started in a bunch of different courts and kind of weaved its way through like the legal system that eventually ends up in the Supreme Court. So again, it's possible for a case to start in the Supreme Court. That's rare. More likely than not, the Supreme Court is hearing the case on appeal.